Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about magic, creativity, the tarot, lunar living, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so happy you're here. Hey, my loves. How are ya? I'm feeling a little weird, not gonna lie. And also, when I feel kind of weird, when things feel kind of weird, I can kind of commit to leaning into the weirdness and maybe even out-weirding the weirdness and seeing what combinations come up. So that's me. I think partially it's because I can't believe we're in the home stretch of 2021. I can't really believe it is November. I'm still processing. Won't you process along with me, my dears, my other transitionally challenged dears? You know, this year felt so fast and so slow, right? How? Over here in Lunar Land, I am celebrating the release of the Many Moons 2022 Lunar Planner. This is a project that involves a lot of people and a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of care. And it has arrived in the studio and I am celebrating. I'm really trying hard this year to celebrate my accomplishments and with it to celebrate the accomplishments of everyone involved. I'm so proud of what we did and what we created, and really that we were able to do it at all and still make it affordable. There were quite a bit of challenges this year. I'm not going to go into, but yeah, it was a challenge. But yeah, she's here. She's beautiful. I say this every year. This might be the best one yet. This is a planner, a grimoire. It has every single month, every single week, every single day. There are all bank holidays. It has witch holidays. It has every major astrological transit. It has every single phase of the moon and the moon sign. It is in for every day of 2022. There are spaces to reflect. There are spaces to put to-do lists. Every new and full moon has an incredible essay, an incredible share, an incredible spell, journaling prompts, prayers, channeled information for every new and full moon, along with weekly prompts and reminders. We are going to be shipping these lovelies out to everyone until December 15th. That is when the store closes. I do think if you like this podcast, you'll love this planner. Even if you don't consider yourself a planner person, which I am not, by the way, raise his hand, you'll love it. The feedback we get from folks is that this is the first planner they finish from like start to finish that they keep up with. There are so many spells, rituals, tarot spreads, monthly themes, just so much in there that if you just do one of them, I promise your life will be enhanced and possibly transformed. This is a place to keep track of your moods, your tarot card pulls, your appointments as well. And it's truly a field guide to a modern, spiritual, magical, creative person's practice. To order, click the link in the show notes or go to modernwomenprojects.com. And before we get into this week's episode, I've got to announce this month's giveaway winner. Every month, I randomly pick someone to give a free 25-minute tarot reading to. All you've got to do is leave a 5-star review along with a comment. And the winner for this month's giveaway is Kelly Sao, Kellisao. They write, Sarah is one of my guides and teachers. It is a review from July 23rd, 2021. And I'm not going to read the whole review, but it was a lovely review. I'm so grateful for you leaving it. It warmed my heart. So please email moonbeamingpodcast@gmail.com to set up a reading, my dear. And if you love this show, if you want to support this show, this is an independent podcast. If you want to help us be found, write a review. They really help. That's why all podcasts always ask you, the listener, because it's a way to boost visibility in ye old algorithm of ye old tech overlords. And so it then introduces other people to the podcast, as the tech overlords and corporations seem to be taking over everything. Honestly, seriously, word of mouth and sharing gets really, really important. It's especially important for those of us who are DIY folks creating projects on shoestring or non-existent budgets and late at night alone. Hi, it's me. It's late at night. I'm alone here talking to you. Your reviews, your shares could not be more appreciated. And to all of you who have shared and left reviews, I appreciate you so, so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so hold on to your broomsticks, witches, because this week we've got a witch famous guest. I was lucky enough to interview Erica Feldmann, the one and only writer, business witch, founder and owner of HausWitch Home and Healing, and someone who I just adore and admire. She has been carrying my work and supporting me for, I want to say a decade. It's probably less, but what is time? And she's someone who has created something incredibly original a long time ago. It might feel normal now, like the witch store, the witch lifestyle store, because there are so many of these now that support small independent makers who are feminist, who have a political point of view. But honestly, this was not the case just a little while ago. I promise. I know our memories are completely shot and fried, but I remember, and there were 3 or 4 stores 5, 6, 7 years ago. I know that Erica has inspired a ton of people, and I am so in awe of how she lives out her politics and values in her business and publicly. And it's been such a treat to see HausWitch grow and bloom. Y'all, this is such a great conversation. We talk about commercialism and consumerism and how that influences or intersects with spiritual practices and how we are witches and practice in the world in this weird mall, internet, online space. Erica talks about how she views witchcraft and what living as an out witch is really like in the day-to-day. We chat about how business can be a place for internal growth and a space to facilitate inner child healing. And we get into some details around business, like what we wish we had known, how running businesses have helped us heal certain things. Of course, being capitalist critical enters this conversation, and Erica has some great observations about all of these uncomfortable intersections. We talk about how having witchy businesses have helped us heal scarcity stuff, and Erica shares about how she's done that. It's a really honest conversation. It's pretty raw. I get pretty vulnerable for me. And that's because I'm chatting with an old friend who I trust. This is for you if you own your own business, if you want to own your own business, if you've been putting your values into practice, but you feel alone, or if you've been curious about moving past surface or extractive definitions of what witches are or what witchcraft can be. Hopefully, y'all enjoy this conversation as much as I had having it. I truly could have talked to Erica for hours. She is a total treasure. And now, here she is. Hello. I could not be more excited. Maybe I began this podcast just so I could have an interview with our guest today. Maybe, our guest today is absolutely incredible. I have been such an admirer of her for as long as I've known her. We'll get into, I think, how we know each other because I need a reminder. But our guest today is Erica Feldmann of HausWitch. I know you know her. I just want to take a minute to give Erica her flowers because what I will say is, in this year of the Lord 2021 that we're in, what is time? Who knows? It's in my year of the goddess. It's like in the Jewish calendar, it's like 58 something. I don't even know because both of our brains are mushy this morning. But Erica, I know we all think that you throw a crystal and there's a witch store. I know you all think that, there's witch blogs and witch resources, that it is abundant now. I am grateful it is abundant now. And Erica began her project in a time where it was not abundant. I'm only speaking from my own perspective, right? Very narrow, very tiny. But when I first came across Erica, things that were available in terms of tools or resources were either kind of you would have to go on Etsy, or it would be like the dusty witch shop where the woman would look at you kind of mean and you'd have to know all of the names of the tree of life. And it was very, very skewed, and Erica created this resource, not only in a store where you could buy beautiful things that are ethically made by makers and witches and artists, and we'll get into all of that. And also there's a blog and there are classes and people are sharing their practice. And I really think, Erica, you had this vision that was your own vision, very clearly born out of your interests, your tastes, your knowledge, your experience. And you really had it come to life in a time where there weren't many I don't think there was a map really for, there wasn't oh yeah, it's this and that. And you really I've watched your business grown. I've watched, you grow. And I just you do things, you always stay, it feels as though you're really trying hard to stay in line with your vision and to provide offerings that are accessible on all levels. There's free things, free 99 if someone wants to read a blog post or a newsletter. And there's, if someone wants the amazing, piece of furniture or whatever for however much, it's really, you're supporting so many through your store. I think you're helping demystify what a witchcraft practice can be. And I really admire you. And I think that you do really good work. And I know you and I know your heart. And I know that you're always trying really hard and you're coming from a wholehearted place, So I just wanted to shout you out because I think some people don't have a memory. I think the internet has deleted our long-term memory. And I remember I was oh my God, what is this magical place? What is this person doing? They love feminism and witchcraft and, they're smart and they have great taste. So I just wanted to shout you out. So that's my introduction to you and the show, listeners. Erica, if you could just introduce yourself in your own words, what you do, how you kind of present yourself publicly, that would be wonderful.
I mean, I don't even want to say anything because I just want what you just said about me to live on in infamy on the digital airwaves forever. But so thank you for that absolutely glowing introduction. I'm going to be dining out on that for a month probably. So yeah, my name is Erica Feldmann, and I call myself the head witch in charge at HausWitch Home and Healing, and we are based in Salem, Massachusetts. We opened in 2015, and I sort of thought I was opening like a vintage furniture store that would sell candles and spells to make your house feel good and tarot cards and stuff like that. And I quickly learned that the business was actually going to be mostly magical witchcraft items, which I was not mad at, certainly as a, sort of practicing witch at that point for, 20 years. But it was surprising in a way. And I would say the business really stepped into itself after the election in 2016 because, I had gone to grad school for gender and cultural studies. I've always been, a pretty politically aware person, interested in social justice, anti-capitalism, anti-white supremacy, radical feminism. And I just saw that I had this platform and this space and so much of what I'm interested in with witchcraft and the culture around it is this opportunity to see the witch as an archetype of sort of defiance and witchcraft as an antidote to our current, cultural, political, socio economic, psychic, dystopian situation that we're in right now. And it's interesting because I think a lot of what I do with HausWitch is like the exact opposite of what a lot of people would tell you to do with business. But as soon as I really brought that more political, more radical feminist, intersectional feminist element in, is when I think people really fell in love with the project. I think that it definitely, it was on people's radar before that, of course. And I know that we were on each other's radar. I know that, we've been obsessed with you and your work since the beginning for sure. But I think it really became what it is in 2016 after that election. And when I said, you know what, like the days of being quiet, the days of just like resting on, my privileged white person laurels are over. And we've got to really talk about the fact that, being a witch isn't just about like herbs and spells and all of this sort of thing. Really, it's about alignment, right? And it's about alignment, I think, with what's in the highest and best of interest of yourself, of course, but also your community. And that's just as important, I think. And I also think that, not to jump too far ahead, but, I think that as we were talking about before we jumped on and why we have mush brains right now is like, there's no way that what is going on in the world around us and in sort of the collective is like not affecting us on an individual level, on an energetic level, on a physical level, mental health level, all of this stuff, right? And I feel like witchcraft is really a, technology for addressing that, right? So that's what interests me. And that has sort of been what has gotten woven into the project of HausWitch, where, we're a witch store in Salem, and there's a dozen plus of those. But for me, I just felt like it was really important to use that platform that we have and use this incredible community that has formed around the shop for, to raise awareness at the very least, and we definitely have, we definitely work with mutual aid orgs, and we definitely work with, sort of local organizations and, national ones as well, to be doing actually like action. And, our shop manager Paige and I have a podcast that we dust off every once in a while in election season called Witch the Vote, just to help give people information, who are the witches voting for? Who gets the witch stamp of approval in this current election cycle? So that's the very long answer. Again, your editor is going to have their work cut out for them. This is a Gemini with a Mercury in Gemini, so look out.
Okay, listen, what you shared is amazing. There's so much. I'm actually just shelving a lot of my questions and I want to start talking. You just presented such a treasure trove of incredible delights of topics that I'm like, yes, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about this. Erica's so smart. I don't even remember how we met. I know we met because of the internet. Thank goodness. Like the internet, the blessing and the curse of the internet, right? I don't remember. Maybe you started carrying my stuff. I have no idea. But then
I think that's got to be how it started. Yeah. I mean,
and then like I
reached out to you about carrying stuff, maybe.
And then I like came to Salem a couple times.
I still have, I'm going to turn my computer, but this is my office and I have the Witch is Witch print of yours.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Yeah. I thank you. And this is now, I'm at the phase in my creation where I'm like, oh yeah, vintage. This is vintage me. Like, it's when it's 7 years old or whatever. Anyway.
Yep.
I have a mushy brain. We're like mushy brain witches. Here we go.
I mean, if there's anybody I want to be mushy with.
It's true. It's the same. Okay. This is the other thing I just want to tell the listeners too. Erica and I were talking before we hit record and we were saying that, for everyone who's always like, Cancer season, so hard, or like Leo season. Yeah. Like, no, like in a pandemic, any season is a little, yeah. So like, if you're feeling it, this is going to be going live in October. If you're feeling it, it might be Scorpio season, but it might be Libra season. Yeah. I don't know yet. But anyway, just remember we're in a pandemic and that like Erica said, what is happening in the external affects the internal, especially if you're sensitive. I want to get started. I want to backtrack with something you said that stuck in my mind. You said, I thought that HausWitch was going to be like a vintage furniture store that maybe would sell a few, tarot decks and napkins and candles and so on and so forth. And it quickly became clear that it was going to be a witch store. Well, like, what do you mean? It became clear. Like, that's what the people wanted. That's what your angels told you. Like, it came in a dream. Like,
probably a combination, but definitely the sort of practical. A lot of our customers are tourists. They're walking traffic. They're not buying arc lamps. I
understand. Right.
But I also I thought that because there are so many other witch stores in Salem that people would not need another one or see mine in that way. And I do always say that I opened the store that I always wanted to shop at here because that didn't exist, but it really was, people really responded to us. I think people saw us right away as a witch store. And as a witch store that was different. And so that combined with the practical of like I said, like tourists just aren't wandering around downtown looking for a coffee table, And honestly, I mean, I love vintage furniture. I love hunting for it, what a manifestation magical process of saying like, right now I'm looking for a kitchen table and chairs, and I've made a sort of the commitment in furnishing my new home to not buy new, like wherever possible, which with furniture is pretty possible. So I'm holding out, I'm waiting for the perfect thing to come along. And when it does, it's like, is there anything? Well, I'm sure there's lots of things that feel that magical, but for me,
you're all, sex is great, but have you ever found a mid-century?
Truly. Have you ever found, the perfect, right, exactly, like 80s glam bean-shaped coffee table for your living room? Because I think that's very magical, but at the end of the day, it also would have been a lot of work for me because I am very dedicated to also keeping things accessible price-wise. And so that sweet spot of like awesome piece that like looks really good, is in good condition, and I can price it affordably to still make money on it, that was going to be a real trick. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I get it. I understand. It's like that mix. I wanted to jump ahead to something else you said that stuck in my brain, which is that witchcraft as technology. And I really love that. And I want to get into how you see that working for you in your own life, maybe how you can see it and you're like gender studies master's brain. And also, like, I do want to kind of get into the archetype of the witch a little bit with you and how you see it, how you experience it. So, like, what do you think is the technology of the witch?
I think for me personally, it has a lot to do with taking your power back from whoever you've given it to, right? And I think that process of learning and knowing who you've given it to and then unlearning what you've picked up with that's kind of the main thing for me, and I know that sort of this idea of like witchcraft as empowerment or just empowerment in general, is kind of getting a bad rap right now. And I think rightly so in some contexts. But, I also think that for, women and queer folks and anybody who's like underrepresented, witchcraft offers a really powerful container, I think, and also, like I said, I mean, a technology for a framework for understanding how you yourself can hold the power. You do not have to give it to a religion. You do not, I do not consider myself a religious witch. And I just wrote this down the other day. So I consider HausWitch to be post-religious. So yeah, I know. Okay, you're giving me a side eye, and I know, and I'm still fleshing out this idea. So this may be an idea that I come back and say, don't put that in the podcast. But, I would say, as sort of a Marxist, right? I have a hard time seeing around what religion has done to disempower people and to cause a lot of problems, really, kind of everywhere, especially when we think about, dominant religions, right? And I'll go ahead and say it, Christianity being sort of the main culprit here that I'm thinking of. And so I think that whether it's that you find power in herbs and in nature and in crystals, those are things that are powerful when they come into contact with your personal energy, right? I mean, they're powerful on their own, but in terms of how we harness those elements of nature and elements of these things around us, it's about the vibrations and it's about coming into contact with your own personal energy, right? So I just really like that about it. And you really don't need any of those things to be a witch either, which, people always kind of laugh because I own a witch store, but I'm like, you don't need any of that stuff. I mean, but it's helpful, right? It's helpful and it's pretty. And, to me, like any tool that helps you set an intention is really important. And that is a really spiritual thing. And I certainly have plenty of those things in my life. But what I like about witchcraft, I think, and the way that I think of it and I practice it is that it's a very sacred relationship that really requires that you get to understand you, right? Does that make sense? And it cuts out all of the middlemen in a way. And I think that that's important because I think that the middlemen are really mucking it up.
I love everything that you said. I think we do have to put witchcraft in a conversation. Like, I like to have these conversations with people, and the way my brain works, I have ADHD. So basically what I'll do is I'll just throw one thing, like if there's a circle, I'll throw one thing and then I'll throw another thing and then I'll throw another thing. And then I'll kind of watch them swim around each other and I'll see how they overlap and I'll see how they don't. And I'll sort of see if I can come to some conclusion. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I don't know whether it's the influence of the internet in my mind that has made me feel like I have to preface everything I say in terms of, well, I'm only speaking about this one thing, like if I say something that is like, I love bananas so much, then I'll inevitably get a comment where someone's like, what about apples? Like, you don't care about apples. So I'm just prefacing this where like, this is a huge conversation and I'm just sort of throwing some things in the cauldron so that we can kind of alchemize them or sort of see how they live together. And I think that we can't really talk about witchcraft without mentioning organized religion, because in general, in Western culture, which is like where we are from and where we live and what we know or don't know, because we're always unlearning or we're figuring out what we were never taught, right? It's this ongoing process if you live in our culture. And witchcraft was basically from the jump, in Europe at least, I don't know about in other countries specifically, positioned in opposition to religion. It was the bad thing. It was the thing you weren't supposed to do. So I like how you said like post religion. I like talking about that and like speaking it into existence. Like, what if we did live in a post religious world? What if our government was truly secular? I mean, like,
Wow. That's a
yeah,
big what
yeah,
if, you know?
yeah. It's a big what if. But like, what if we could choose our own beliefs and did not have to deal with the consequences of said beliefs, so long as they weren't harming or hurting or gatekeeping or policing anyone else or stealing or appropriating, and on and on and on. And I think the witch exists in this opposition by design, and also conveniently, like in a good way, to offer up this different way of being, which you so eloquently stated, which is that we can have access to our energy, we can have access to our power, we can tap into our strengths, our magic. I use magic very widely. It could just be, oh, you're really good at drawing, or oh, you're really good at plants, or you're really kind. Your magic is kindness, or whatever it is. You can tap into that unabashedly, without shame, without needing validation, without needing it to fit into some kind of, box or square. And the other thing you pointed out that I loved in terms of this like witchcraft as technology is the relational aspect of it. Witchcraft reminds us that we're part of nature. And whether that's through, drinking my like herbal tonic that I do, or hanging out with trees, or talking to birds, or whatever it is, it situates us in place. And it reminds us that we're part of a larger web. We are so interdependent. And that doesn't have to, that's a beautiful thing, And so I think, and I love also what you parsed out about the symbolic part of it, because I know you're a real like art lover, and so am I. And the symbols, both archetypally that give the symbols more power, and also your own personal symbols. Maybe your personal symbol is your red lipstick. Maybe that means something to you, like other than just the fact that you look amazing in Lady Danger. And this is reminding me that I need to buy some more. But, so I love all of this. It's like witchcraft as a technology. Not only can it heal us, not only do spells absolutely work, not only is there this like rich and very interesting history to it, it positions us in place in our power so that we can be in relationship with the world in an aligned way. And so I just feel like this is like,
Yeah, I think you actually said it better than me, so thank you. But yes.
No, I mean, you brought out all these things, and because again, when we're talking about witchcraft, it's like we could be here. I mean, this is like a very wide and
hours,
vast,
days,
exactly.
days,
Yes.
maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, but I love what you brought up there, because it's been a minute since I've thought about witchcraft as a technology, or my practice as a technology, or other people's practice as a technology. So thank you for that. And I was curious, like, what does your practice kind of look like, if you feel comfortable sharing, like these days?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at this point, it is pretty integrated just into my day to day, my consciousness. So I always get a little freaked with this question because I'm like, what if I don't sound witchy enough? But just this morning, I was out on a jog, which is not easy for me, but I do it in the summer, anyways. And, I was like kind of struggling with my breath, but I run on this beautiful tree lined street. And so I asked the trees, I said, please give me a little more oxygen. You are so lush and beautiful and green this morning. I need that, to keep going. And I kept going and I finished my jog. So it's as simple as that. It's, I take essences in the morning and like multivitamins. Obviously, I observe the moon phases and celebrate accordingly. But again, that looks like the last dark moon. Melissa and I, that's my wife, we cleaned out our fridge and made dark moon dumplings I think that a sort of muggle, which I don't really use that term very often because I am not actually familiar with the Harry Potter canon, but I think someone like that would look at my life and think I'm very witchy. And I, look at
Right.
myself and think like, because, I don't have like a mastery of herbalism, certainly. I have a good working knowledge of tarot and astrology and crystals, but again, no expert. I'm definitely like a jack of all trades kind of witch. But again, I mean, it's something that I've been fascinated by, I mean, really as far back as I can remember. So again, it's one of these things that it's just sort of like, I don't actually know where some of the stuff where there's the line is, right?
What I love also that you brought up that I just want to share again with the listeners is that I think as you were speaking and you're like, well, my practice is minimal, or, some people would look at my life and think I'm very witchy, and some people, it's very integrated. I think also there can be this influence of capitalism on our practices in the sense of like, oh, you have to do it. You have to do it in this particular way. It has to be disciplined. It has to be for like 3 hours a week or whatever it is. And I'm really in my own life trying to switch from the doing to the being. And so it's like if you just are a witch, it's like I've gone a year without casting a spell, I've had times in my life where I've cast spells like clockwork every month, or, I've gone through months where I haven't meditated. And also I've had months where I'm like having a 2-hour-long morning practice full of yoga and meditation and tarot and journaling and all the things. And
absolutely,
I have gone through months without speaking to my guides, and then absolutely. I go through periods where I'm like every day I'm like, hello, hi. So I think that it's mutable and it changes. And I think I'm just curious. And I know our listeners are curious. But I love that you brought this up, because if this is just your life, if you're someone who talks to trees or lays on the ground when you're stressed out and like lets the earth, support you, then you just are, but I am always curious about like, I love the dark moon dumplings. I love cleaning out the fridge on the dark moon. That's like such a great idea. Like, so yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, obviously, as the owner of a witch store, I mean, I think my life is inherently witchy, right? And
it's low key, like practical magic vibes. Like you're giving me low key practical magic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
On that tip with like business and witchcraft and passion and your life, you have created a business out of a number of your different passions: politics, the home, witchcraft, magic, retail. I want to talk about it because I feel like people can glamorize owning a business. And I'm not on any level saying that it's not glamorous and incredible and amazing. And also, things can get tricky, at least in my life. Maybe you have much better boundaries with it.
No, we are just coasting over here in tourist season. No, it's a schlep. That's what I'm here to say. Okay. I never, my father passed away and he is sort of the guardian angel of this business. And I always, when I'm like at our storage unit, like in my, sweat, like drenched in sweat, rolling around boxes of mugs and whatever else. And I just picture my father up there, who was, the hardest working man I've ever met, just dying laughing at this schlep. And then, I do turn around and sometimes there are really glamorous aspects to this, obviously. So, but, business witch is probably where I would situate myself if I had to kind of like label myself in terms of like what kind of witchcraft I practice, because I do think that is a lane that I have a little bit of a flow in,
we need to talk about this. We need to talk. So yeah, my face was like, and it wasn't like, it just was like, I just didn't think you were going to say that.
Really? Oh, that's surprising.
Not that I don't think of you as a business witch. I just, maybe I haven't read you talk a lot about business. So now I'm excited. Like, I'm like, let's get into this. Okay. So let's talk about the business aspect of it. And in terms of, do you think that you're skilled at business because of your intuition?
Absolutely. I think of that. And I think honestly, because of the liberation that identifying as a witch gives me to not go along with, business as usual, to borrow a phrase from our friends over at Sister. And to, and I think just being in the position of a witch gives you opportunity, to just kind of reject all of that. And that has been really, like I said, helpful and liberating. And it's almost like business is my medium that I had been searching for my whole life, really, because I know that I am a creative person, but I'm not an artist. I can't make a pot. I can't draw. I can't, I will say that I was studying photography and almost went to art school for photography, which is, I think, Instagram coming in and being obviously really crucial to building the momentum for HausWitch. It was really nice to be able to flex those sort of muscles because I had them. Now, obviously, Instagram is like, just make commercials for yourself. It's, we don't even need to get into Instagram, but it was cool when it was a photo sharing app and I liked taking photos. And I took all the photos for my book on my iPhone.
Which is beautiful, which is gorgeous, by the way. So yes. Give me an example, because if I had to categorize my witch label, it would be, I'm a practical witch. I'm like,
Okay.
like what is an example of something you did in your business that maybe really defies the business as usual, that works, that like people told you not to, or you've never seen it done before, and you're like, oh, this actually works really well?
Yeah, I think, well, the first and kind of most obvious one based on like the conversation we're having is just bringing politics into the business, and my career before this was largely managing high-end hair salons. And, one thing they tell people in hair school is, never talk about politics with your clients. And, again, I think, we're, because of Instagram and because, sort of retail, I guess, has become more populist in a way because of things like social media, that idea seems wild, because I think like every other day I see, another sort of like political sticker brand or whatever, Right. But again, like back when I started the business, that was not the case. And especially after that election, me going hard on kind of like identity politics and really like and just calling attention to like how super evil what we had just voted into office was and all of that kind of stuff. I think that most, kind of like cis white hat men in business would have been like, that's crazy. Don't sow more division or whatever. And then I think the other thing is really paying people a living wage, or, certainly as close to as you can get. I mean, I am still a retail business, but my meetings with my bookkeeper are usually like, can I be putting more money into payroll?
Yeah. The other interesting thing that you're underscoring here, though, that I was thinking of as you were speaking is like, when the bar is so low for business, like I think similar
it's
to,
so low right now. I mean, just because I'm following this great American labor shortage, right, that we're in right now with retail and restaurants. And it is unconscionable to me that employers have been getting away with what they've been getting away with for so long. And, there's this sentiment that it's the extra unemployment that is causing people to not go back to work. And that's so insulting to the working class. And it's not accurate, and if anything, that extra money has allowed people to just find better jobs. And like, I have somebody that just started with us that I'm not even paying them that much more than they were getting at their, corporate gig. But the environment is so different. And, the opportunity for moving up, I have people who I pay $10 more an hour than when they started just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so because it's just kind of like, once you know that somebody's like a good fit, then I'm like, okay, I want to keep you. Like, let's like build this together. I really think of HausWitch as collaborative. I really, I'm not somebody who takes a huge salary and then like pays my people nothing. I just try to make it as equitable as possible while still, compensating myself for the level of responsibility that I have running the business and stuff like that. But like I said, at the same time, my conversations with my bookkeeper are like, can I be paying people more? I want to pay them more, I just think there's a real disconnection. We've allowed a real disconnection. And I think this definitely starts with corporate culture, where you have a big CEO who literally never, ever interacts with their lowest paid employees. And so they don't know. And I think one thing, as kind of a class warrior witch, one thing that has proven true time and time again is just that like, wealthy people have no fucking idea like what is going on for the rest of us. And that is what allows them to have this cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
But when you run a small business, you're looking at your people, you're watching your people get off the bus, like haggard in 100-degree heat. You're watching your people, you know how they live. And so to be in the position of knowing that and being in control of sort of, what that person's standard of living is, like, I just take that it's probably the thing I take most seriously in this business,
Well, how could you not? This is literally like people's lives. It's literally how they pay their rent. It's literally like that's the thing too with my business. I don't
like, do I want to be going on vacations and like buying nice dresses and then seeing my employees like struggle? Like, that's crazy, but unfortunately, like, I think that has been even within the world of small, but I know that it has been because I work on committees around town and and boards and stuff like that. And I'm in conversation with lots of other small business owners. And that has trickled down to small business too. Not all. I think that in general, small businesses are better about taking care of their people, but I'm here to tell you that it's not all small businesses, and
that's a big thing, because when people, so I just have one right now, I have one full-time employee, who I hate even saying that. I'm like, this is my coworker, you introduced me. You were the one. This is like the love of my life, Maddie. You introduced us. I'm so grateful to you.
I love you. I miss you.
I actually don't think she listens to this podcast. Like, she has good boundaries with like work stuff,
No, totally. Anyway, that makes me happy to hear, honestly. Even though it's
but we love
podcast.
you. We'll tell her that. I'll tell her to listen. But anyway, people are shocked when they find out what I pay her. Like, we're probably in 2022 going to start like profit sharing, looking at these things. I pay everyone. I work with a lot of freelancers. They're all non-binary folks, women and trans folks. And I pay them their rate, like I pay people who write for me more than what big publishing companies pay, which I find absolutely abysmal. Like, what,
we could also probably talk for days about big publishing.
Let's not, because that's totally offline. Yeah, we both have published books, and we had our. I think some people would call it a journey. It was a journey.
I would definitely call it a fool's journey, is what I would call it.
Yeah. So I think going back to the thing about payment and wages, and like, it's a business, like it's generating income. And I think that, the other thing is for me, and I don't know if this has changed for you, when I started working for myself and I started a business, in quotes, also the whole concept of like money changed for me.
Well, I am here to tell you that as a person that grew up in scarcity, realizing that my job now was actually to spend money, like constantly, was a real struggle. And I definitely still push back against it all the time, but I have gotten much better at that and running the business from more of an abundance mindset. And it's helpful that I know that I am supporting truly the people that I want to support, and not just with my staff, but with the vendors that we carry their stuff in the store, and special guest witches that do workshops and stuff like that. Like, we are very limited in what we carry, that it's not a direct like relationship where it's like literally me texting my friend Christina and being like, hey, can you send, 100 more pots, whatever. And like I said, that guarantees that the money that we're making with this business and putting back out into the world is supporting the best possible people. And so that makes it a lot easier to spend the money. But, like I said, I grew up working class. I lived paycheck to paycheck my entire adult life. But of course, you have to spend money to make money, right? And I just didn't really make that connection. I mean, I will say, like, I jumped into starting a business, like, talk about a fool's journey. I mean, like, me and my bindle and my dog were leaping off that cliff, But
very fashionable homemade bindle, by the way.
Yeah.
A local artist, yeah.
Artisanal linen, yeah. No, and so that kind of hit me. I'll never forget. It was right before our first October. And, the Great Wild Unknown tarot deck had been doing really well for us. And I ordered, I forget what the quantity was, but it was $1,000 worth of tarot decks. And I was like, I can't believe, again, you hear all the they that's in your head. And this is like, for sure, my ancestors who, definitely lived in scarcity going, $1,000 on tarot decks? Are you crazy? And now if I only spend $1,000 on tarot decks, I'm like, what a bargain,
Well, now you're like, hell yeah, I'm a witch who spends $1,000 on tarot decks. My life is so cool.
Oh, we have that realization around here on the daily, when I'm just like yeah, can we just get, I'm finally putting a true blue sales counter. I'm investing in, and this is an investment in stability. And I think that this is another kind of like low key witchcraft thing, right? Is I'm investing in stability right now. Obviously, we all probably feel pretty unstable after this last year. And we've never had a true sales counter at the store. We have a little table basically that I built with IKEA legs. And then I, sanded and stained and all this other stuff, the little countertop. And the volume of sales we're doing right now, it just has really kind of become impractical, right? So I'm finally putting in a sales counter and we are making space for Paige, the shop manager's troll doll, to have an office space. And it's that kind of shit that I'm like, this is why I'm a powerful witch, because I am building a troll doll office because I want to.
Period.
Because we love Magda. She's the head of HR over here and she deserves her own office. And, and I always say, like, within my 900 square feet of the world, we're in charge. It's not about, again, like white cis het men. We're doing whatever we want and we're building troll offices and we have a mystery crystal gumball machine and we support all of the, like I said, like, we are the weirdos in that 900 square feet. And that is sacred to us. That is the most sacred thing, I think.
I also, a total witch life tip for all you listening is making space for what you want to happen will make things that you want to happen flow to you. So building that space for people to ring up and prepare people's orders is only going, it's like setting the stage. I always teach this. So it's like on all the levels, you're creating space. And on that note, I wanted to kind of ask you, like, what systems, whether like mentally, mindset wise, or literal, practical, what systems in your business have really helped you make it run much easier?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, like I said, my career was in small business management. It was not retail. So I am still learning a ton about the retail business all the time. But I think for me, like morale, just keeping morale in a certain place is really important. I'm trying to think of like systems. I mean, I also have, I want to say raging ADHD, but maybe that's just because I have so much rage in general right now.
I mean, pandemic plus ADHD equals volcano brain. Like,
right,
basically.
I'm like, do I have systems? I don't know. I mean, I'm sitting at a desk that looks pretty messy right now, honestly. But, we have, okay, I mean, here's another sort of like, this is what witches have built. We have a weekly meeting that is called our content meeting because it's discussing our content for the week, but we do it on Tuesdays. So it's also a see you next Tuesday joke. And we build lots of kind of ritual into that. Again, really not taking ourselves very seriously, but it's a touch base with sort of, like I said, the content team, which is me and our retail consultant, Janine from Feel Good Retail, shout out to her, and then Paige, the shop manager, and Kaylin, who runs our Instagram and newsletter right now. And we definitely feel like a coven of witches around a cauldron, when we're doing those meetings, and we process a lot and we create a lot, and we couldn't, it's definitely a sum of our parts kind of situation. I mean, there's no way I could be keeping up with the content required for this business now. And there's no way that I could get the information of what will be most successful and like what has been most successful, what our people want to hear. I mean, that's a big project, again, from starting with Instagram got me really, really, really far, really, really, really far with one photo a day that I took on my phone of some cool thing that we were selling in the store, to now it's a real thing, and so we meet weekly and we, vision for the week ahead, the month ahead, the season ahead. And yeah, I would definitely say, like, if y'all have seen our witches candle, brilliant Bill Christofi illustration of 3 witches around a cauldron in the forest, that is the vibe of the content meetings.
And I hear you saying that things really changed for you when you brought more people in to help and when you trusted more people with their natural gifts and you allowed, it wasn't just you doing it on your own. And I'm wondering if so that's my problem, where it's like, it's very difficult for me to figure out. I mean, I do more hiring out now, but like, I'm wondering were you, I mean, cause I'm a low key control freak. So did things have to change, or were you always sort of like community, like communal, like I want you to help, like, or was there a moment or something that shifted, or was it just sort of a natural progression to letting more folks do what they do best to help expand what you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, I would say that really, growing up in small business showed me how to discern between somebody that you could trust and you couldn't, right? And then I did have a job. One of my last jobs before I opened the store, I managed a team of 50 people.
Whoa.
Within a corporation where there was definitely hierarchy, right? And so I was the boss of these 50 people. But what I'm here to tell the billionaires of the world is that when there's way more of them, you better be, aligned with what is going on. And, someday the billionaires will be made to see that there are many more of us. I'm anxiously awaiting that moment. But in that situation, right, it was like, if I'm not respecting these people, if I'm not viewing them as collaborators, if I'm not viewing them as really coworkers, even though, again, like I was in charge, but if 50 of them wanted to revolt against me, like, what would I do about that, But I also am a control freak. And so I think it's just a combination of like really being discerning with your hiring and really making sure that you feel really good about the person. And I think that's a particular kind of manifesting magic too. That HausWitch has just actually been a project that manifests just really incredible people. And that's what shows me that HausWitch is really bigger than me too. I mean, like, I've known that all along, just the response to it. I'm like, this isn't just about me and like what I've created. Like, I am the channel for it, but it is so much bigger. And so there have to be other people that contribute to it. So, basically I try to be a hands-off manager, but at the same time, I like to set really strict sort of like guidelines and boundaries. And I'll say, like, I want this done like this. As long as this is getting done like this, I will not bother you, and I will let your expertise dictate how this goes from here. So sure. I think it's about setting up those structures, setting up those kind of non-negotiables of like, this is how this has to be for this business to be right. But other than that, add your flair, add your creativity, add your genius. And that's how I try to do it. And obviously you are going to get some, bad apples, and things are going to go a little haywire sometimes. I've definitely, just even in the last couple months, struggled with a couple of those instances. But ultimately, again, it also goes back to this abundance mindset of like, every time I've hired another person, the business has picked up and they've been paid for.
So that's been sort of like a huge, it feels like, because you mentioned it a couple times, that's been a big shift you had to put into practice from switching from scarcity to abundance. And it really does confront you when you run a business or work for yourself, because it's like you and money is like, money's like,
that's
hi.
it. All I do all day is money.
And you're like, oh, okay, I've got some hangups here. I've got some programming here, especially like you. I was like, much of my life, I lived paycheck to paycheck as well. And so there's like a lot of different layers there. And so I'm just wondering, what do you think the ingredients are for an abundance mindset or practice?
I read part of a book, and I know that you've sort of had a discourse going on Instagram about this, but I read part of a book called The Energy of Money. And there was just a really simple visualization. Sometimes for me, like one visualization meditation will literally knock out years and years and years of conditioning and patterning. And this particular one, which was just really about visualizing yourself kind of stepping out of the, embodied feeling of scarcity and into, just imagining what it might feel like to not have that, cleared a lot of energy for me. But it's like definitely a process. I mean, but being able to call back to that visualization, really being able to, I think, like feel flow over clenchedness, which is not a word, but
like you're embodying it is what I hear you saying. You have memorized the energy and you're embodying it. And you also realize that clenching is scarcity, and that by, like you said, like by spending money, by hiring another person, you're creating more flow.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a really concise way of saying what I probably would have stumbled over.
I mean, listen, this is amazing. It's amazing. I wanted to ask you just a few more questions.
Sure.
One is that I really want to talk about, and maybe you don't want to, and that's fine if you don't. I just want to say that because I feel like it's tender in the sense, it's tender for me in the sense like I'm trying to figure it out now, but I want to have these conversations with people I admire about it. And you have brought this up quite a bit. Like you've talked about Instagram, you've talked about like the publicness of it. You've spoken about you are the face. It is much bigger than you. And I would call you the channel. I would call you the visionary. And I would also call you the facilitator, right? Like,
yeah.
So how do you separate Erica, the public person, Instagram interview person? Like, how do you protect Erica, the person?
Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny because I had a sort of similar conversation the other day, and Melissa calls my glasses and my lipstick my HausWitch costume. And so there is that very sort of practical, like visual thing for me. I'm honestly, in my personal life, I am different. I have like really nerdy hobbies and like, I'm very kind of low key, and I don't feel the need to share my personal life really on Instagram at all anymore. And so it is sort of a big drag performance in a way, HausWitch is a big kind of performance in a way. And obviously that sort of persona comes from total authenticity within me. It's not a lie or anything like that, but
of course
it definitely is sort of a persona because I'm at home watching reality TV, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm like hanging out with my cats. Like Instagram was such a lovely moment in time when it was And now I think that it is a means to an end, right? I mean, it is really for me, it's about creating content. It's not about sharing like a life. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
It makes sense. I guess what I'm getting at, and I'll just share like in my personal life where I am really trying to set up energetic boundaries and literal sort of guidelines as you so nicely shared. I think part of this little past flurry of burnout for me, because I'm like trying to like parse it out, like what is it? Like figuring out what caused it and then stopping or, renegotiating what's going on. Like that's what we do. And I think a lot of it has been around this sort of fracture or schism, or I don't know the right word either, like around feeling like a product myself.
100%. And that's by them prioritizing video now, right? They just want us to be making commercials. And so for me, I mean, like the beginning of this year is when I really did kind of set the boundary for myself and I handed over the keys to the Instagram to Kaylin and then promptly started a different Instagram account. But that one is much more, I don't feel any kind of need to be posting to that. It's definitely more of a just, whenever I want to share kind of thing. But because I think Instagram is an energy vampire, any way you slice it. But I also think like for a business like mine, it is a completely necessary thing. And I still do think there is a lot of value in it, and not just from a business perspective, but I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for Instagram. And a lot of people wouldn't know me. And so it is still this kind of beautiful connector in a way. But the process of like doing it is very draining. And it's like when it is not an option, when it is like we have to do this every day for the sake of the business, that became really unsustainable for me personally. And so it was, January of this year that I had Kaylin take it over, and she has done a great job. And, so for me, there's really, that's a task that could be delegated. And even though, again, like if you would have said to me a couple years ago that, I wouldn't be in control of the Instagram, I would have been like, what? But it's a different entity than it was before. And it really is more about targeted stuff meant to work with the algorithm, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's a business. That's not anything that needs to take up my energy necessarily.
For sure. And I think it's not even, for me, it's not even necessarily Instagram, although it plays a part in it. I think it's more just like, in my own experience, and this is like, I'm right in the middle of it, so I have no answer. Well, I'm in process with it. I'll just say that there's sort of is this weird separation between like, I'm doing a lot of cord cutting around people's projections of like, so that's what I mean is like when you're sharing yourself or you're sharing your practice or you're sharing your thoughts or you're sharing what you like or whatever it is. I think that, for me, that's like a big thing where I'm like, and not to get really therapy like, but it's very also inner child stuff where it's like, there's a lot of overlap for me in terms of who I needed to be to survive in the world. And that kicking in the business aspect of myself or the public or whatever you want to call it, that I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to be this person for these. Because we have survival, we have like money, we have harm, we have protection, we have like ingrained patterns, all of these things come up for me around it. So I'm like, oh, I need to cut all cords with anyone's expectations, anyone's projections of me. I'm allowed to exist. I cannot be everything to everyone. And what is for me, like what is sacred for me or for little Sarah or for inner child or for what I'm interested in and how can I keep that vibrant and thriving? And that's been sort of, I think, that's just been, it sounds like you're ahead of me. Like, that's why I like talking to you about it. Like, I think like, it sounds like at the start of this year, you're like anything that is sort of draining my energy in a way that causes me to have discord or dis-ease within myself and like myself awareness and how I view myself and my trust and my connection to myself, right? We're like, I love these circular conversations. We're back at the power, back at the beginning, because it's time to wrap it up. But like anything that keeps me away from like my power, my sovereignty, and I know the discussion in that is needs to be nuanced, and I understand why folks take umbrage with it. But yeah, I'm really understanding how deep capitalism goes, and also how we can create boundaries, not like, oh, a woe is me thing, where it's like, well, what is sacred? What is for me? What is it that cannot be bought or sold? And what feels appropriate to offer up, and how. So like, those are the questions I'm asking myself that, I think other freelancers, other business owners, I wished I had asked myself that like 4 years ago, and been like, oh, and then had it change and adapt as we change and adapt. But like, that was something where I'm like, oh, I have to like retroactively put into place these boundaries. And no one ever told me that starting a business, that like people were going to attack you, or people were going to have this idea of you, or you know what I mean? Like, no one ever taught, like I was not prepared at all. And I think that I'm now like unraveling that aspect, and I'm really glad I'm doing that. So that's why I'm glad to, like, it sounds like you have put things in place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that I had to. I mean, it's so interesting. I resonate so much with what you're saying about people's projections, because that has been a big theme for me this year. Is I've sort of become more embodied in the sense of recognizing where stress actually shows up physically, because I don't know if it's the ADD, I don't know if it's all the air in my chart, but I definitely am up in my head a lot, and always have been. And I feel like this year has really put me back in my body, and it forced me to really see the ways that, with Instagram and with all of the kind of things that you're saying, by putting yourself out there and opening yourself up for critique and pushback and all of these things that I welcome. But at the same time, being that my business is connected to my root, right? And my survival, it just became too much. I'm too close to it. And so by giving it to someone else, and like, some people have kind of said like, and I keep bringing it back to Instagram because that's just our main,
Sure.
channel on social media. But, a couple of people have said to me, I didn't even notice that somebody else was doing it. And a couple of people have said to me, like, I totally did. Like, I know that it's not your, tone anymore. And, that's okay. Because we're doing fine with not my tone, and yeah, like I said, it definitely wasn't easy, and I was definitely like worried about it. But at the same time, like I said, this feeling that I get in my body now when I feel someone else's projections, I have no tolerance for it. I really
That's
don't,
right.
and
Yeah.
I'm even thinking like, do I need to create more space? Because a lot of people are projecting onto me, and the physical feeling is so uncomfortable.
Well, you're so sensitive. Yeah.
I'm kind of wrestling with, do I need to create more space to have some more tolerance? Or do I really let this discomfort teach me what I can't tolerate anymore? I
That's right.
definitely grew up, I was raised by someone with pretty severe mental illness. And so little inner child Erica has a lot of stuff that, she is still untying constantly. And,
Yellow.
like, I'm like, can I just enjoy one damn day of my life without getting into my like childhood trauma? But you know what I mean? So
I sure do.
I'm wrestling with that question of, is part of what would actually be expansive for me being able to have the space to deal with this? Or is it like, no, this is what is pinging you to run the other way?
Right. And this is like by confronting it and by transmuting it in the moment, because that's the same thing, right? Our what activates us is what we are here to transmute and transform. I strongly believe it, and it will continue to follow us around so long as we are not changing what we're doing, so long as we're not alchemizing as well. So I think, yeah, I love all of that. We're just going to leave that in the ether, because I think so many people will relate to this. I think so many people will relate to this. And I know so. And I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable as well. So one last it's October, the most wonderful time of the year. What are you looking forward to? about Halloween? What are you looking forward to? Like, what is your most stokedness part, excitedness part about the season of the witch?
Sure. I mean, obviously, well, for anybody who doesn't know, at about 1 million tourists, and that's an actual number. That's not like me being like a squillion people come here. Like literally 1 million people descend on Salem, Massachusetts in the month of October. And, so it's like a big party. And it's definitely exhausting to have a business here in October. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be really transparent about that. By around the 7th, I am so tired that I'm praying for January, but it's a party, and we get so many people who, are kind of followers of ours or whatever, who come from all over the country, all over the world, and oh, I'm so happy to be here. I followed you forever and I love being here. And that is the juice, like that is really the juice that keeps us going. And just, it's definitely a sacred time of year. It's, it's New England's really big flex season. So it's so beautiful around here. And I have a few like really cool things that are kind of going to be coming out in the next couple months that I'm excited about. It's really exciting that there is still so much momentum around my business after six and a half years now. And it definitely all, starts popping up around this time of year. Everybody wants to talk to the Salem Witch in October, but that's really exciting and awesome and humbling. And so it's a great season overall. And I'm looking forward to scented candles and rituals and just the celebration.
And folks can sign up for your newsletter if they want to know about what's going to be coming their way.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we're on Instagram. And
so, where can the people find you? We'll put all the links in the show notes, but I want you to also just say them all out loud, please.
Sure. Yeah, you can find our website is housewitchstore.com. Instagram is @housewitch. If you are interested in interior decorating, you could follow me at HouseWitch at Home. And sign up for our newsletter for sure. I have to say, like, you have been our guiding light in like getting people onto our newsletter list. I was like, this girl knows what she's doing, getting people off of Instagram onto that newsletter list, because those are your diehards. We love our newsletter. We definitely send things exclusive and send things early. So get on that list. And then, one of the things I'm definitely proudest of with this business is our community page, which you have graced many times with your genius. Free spells, free all sorts of stuff, free horoscopes, free, I love it. It's access to all sorts of stuff that maybe you would learn if you came to the shop and just talked to us in person or came to a workshop. It's just something I'm really proud of as a free resource for people. So definitely check that out. That's housewitchstore.com/community.
Erica, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. I am over the moon.
I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful that you exist and you're so open and brilliant and genius. And I love everything you do. So just thank you so much. And thank you for existing. And everyone listening, go follow HouseWitch, go sign up for their newsletter and buy Erica's book.
Thank you so much. The feeling is so mutual. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Okay, my dears, that is our show for the week. I really hope you enjoyed our conversation. There's so many nuggets, so many takeaways. She's so generous. Sign up for HouseWitch's newsletter, follow them on social, and if you want us to have her back, let us know. Have a beautiful day, and I will be back very soon. Bye for now. Moonbeaming is brought to you by the Moon Studio. We are created and hosted by Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. Editing is by Caitlin George Parker, and the sound is by Will Owen. Thank you for your support. Witches in the autumn leaves, collecting things for John.